Welcome to the Today's Leader podcast, a podcast for the leaders and entrepreneurs of today, building better leadership today to forge the path of success for tomorrow. Here's our host, Tony, Coach Curl.
Way to go, guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul, I see you. All right, Travis, finish on. Coach Curl. Let's go.
Great job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Curl here, and welcome to episode 280 of the Today's Leader podcast. We are back today with our interview series, with our expert series, and today's expert is a great way to kick off our interviews for 2021. Louis Gonzalles is a communications consultant, a coach and a trainer, and he has more than 25 years experience in helping improve business outcomes for organizations. He's successfully driven learning initiatives incorporating effective communication, cross-cultural communication, customer satisfaction, and soft skills training. Currently, he works with CEOs, leaders, and individuals, positively impacting business outcomes through effective communication in global, multicultural, and remote work team settings. Louis has lived and worked in India, Mexico, and Brazil. He's a keynote speaker and is a member of the Association for Training and Development, Association of International Educators, and in the Society of International Education, Training and Research. Louis is an advocate for fierce conversations. And today, you will understand what fierce conversations are all about. We talk so often about equipping our leaders to master the communication, and you'll hear from Louis that fierce conversations equip leaders to say what needs to be said. So after a word from our sponsor, it's my pleasure to bring you Louis Gonzalles.
The podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
It's my pleasure to welcome to the Today's Leader podcast. I have Luis Gonzalles. Luis, how are you?
Doing really well. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Tony.
Now, Luis, you are what we would call a fierce conversations advocate. Can you give me a quick example of what that means?
Yeah, without being too crass, I teach people how to stop having pointless, surface, meaningless conversations and show them how to have impactful, real, authentic conversations that'll help them improve their results while improving their relationships in the workplace and personally. So
tell me a little bit about your background and how you've come into being this advocate around fierce, tough, crucial conversations.
Communication, or shall I say talking, has always been a skill for better or for worse of mine since childhood. I've always been somewhat of a communicator, entertainer, and all of that. But most importantly, I've always had that empathetic side to me where I was trying to always bridge gaps in relationships that are usually because of bad communication or poor communication or miscommunication or something like that. Long story short, I had spent the first 18 years of my professional career in hospitality with the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. And in that environment, I was exposed to so many cultures from around the world and the different style, even within the workplace and the guests. The different styles of communication, and also, again, seeing the breakdowns and trying to understand, like, how does that happen? Why does that happen? Led me to going back to grad school at a late age, in my late 30s, to get my master's degree in international relations with a focus on culture, and became a cross-cultural consultant, basically working around the world with global teams, executives who were leading global teams and helping them improve their communication to help improve the bottom line at the end of the day. Worked at Microsoft in India, worked at a very large IT outsourcing company in India. Then they sent me to the US to do that. And then now I find myself at Fierce, which is doing what I just shared with you a moment ago. I'm a facilitator, trainer, speaker, etc. on fierce conversations. How do we keep it real? How do we say what needs to be said without rocking too many people, without rocking the boats, without rocking their emotional boat, and hopefully enriching the relationship.
So you've come from a background of working around the culture engagement piece, and then some of my listeners may at this moment be thinking, how does that link with the concept of fierce conversations? How does having those conversations that you should be having, that you need to be having, how does that fit in with a engaged workforce, a top performing company culture?
Well, how do you say what needs to be said? So I'll just give you an example in the workplace. I'm, an employee of Acme Company X, and I see some things going on in the workplace that I know aren't right.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not my lane, as we say here in the United States. It's not my business. It's not my job, as we've all heard people say, and maybe even said ourselves. Not my job. Okay. At the end of the day, there's a cost to the organization.
Mm.
In healthcare, the cost could be someone's life. In construction, the cost could be someone's life. In other industries, it may not be so drastic, but there will be a cost that at the end of the year, you will see on the spreadsheet. Could be a lost client due to someone just not speaking up, and the quality of something isn't right, or eventually down the line, it becomes habitual what's going on, and then nobody else cares. The next thing you know, it affects the bottom line. So I'll pause there. That's the connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my aspect, I mean, I think we get poor culture when people see those inconsistencies within organizations, where some people are getting pulled up for doing things wrong, other people are looking at turning a blind eye. So having the ability to be able to talk openly and in a trusting environment, I'm presuming, I haven't done much work in and around that concept of fierce conversations. I talk with my clients in and around a book from Kerry Patterson called Crucial Conversations. But one is building trust one of the key determinants of having the ability to have those fierce conversations?
Well, the goal would be to build some trust. You and I may not have the trust to begin with.
Yeah.
And yet we might work together. You might report to me, or we just might be colleagues, or maybe I'm on a team and you're on a different team and there's some overlap. We may not trust each other because of maybe something that happened in the past, or we just haven't built trust. I just don't trust you. I don't not trust you, but I don't trust you. It's just I don't know you, whatever it is. It starts with the conversation. The trust starts with building that trust through the conversation. Now, if the trust has been damaged, or there isn't any trust to begin with, I start by building trust with you by asking you, let's say in the workplace, asking you how you see a situation. What's your perspective on this? What's the solution you see? Or if there's something I need to confront a situation with you about, hey, can you help me understand what was going on there from your perspective before I go in with any feedback, before I go in with my perspective or what should have been done or any judgments or any of that.
Yeah.
And if I inquire and I get curious with you and ask you, tell me more about that and help me understand that, your walls eventually, in my experience and studies have shown, your walls will eventually come down. Then you'll ask me how I see it. The engagement begins and we go from there. Trust hopefully will be built. So
it's a genuine care. It's a genuine listening aspect. It's and that curiosity of discovery around questions. So,
well, the key word is genuine.
Yeah,
because we human beings are really good at sniffing out when people are disingenuous with us in a conversation.
Yep, the old the BS meter. So, tell me about the emotional aspect, because some people really struggle with the concept of what we're talking about, those conversations that need to happen. There's that emotion, that sense of feeling that comes through us when we get defensive or when we get angry or when we get fearful. So how with that in mind, how do you work with that with people? How is it a case that we're suppressing that, or is it a case that we're acknowledging that and working towards an outcome?
Option B, we're acknowledging it. We're asking, what do you feel? In fact, in a fierce conversation, I may ask you, Tony, what do you feel about that? And you know what? I've gotten a lot of pushback in the training room, for example, the banking and financial industry, companies of the world, whoa, what's this emotion stuff? We leave that at the door. You don't bring your emotions into the workplace. No, you don't bring your emotions and exhibit them in the workplace. But guess what? Science has shown research has shown. In fact, 2 Nobel Prizes were won. One in, I can't remember the year, it was in the early 80s, and the other one was in 2002, I believe. Two times Nobel Prizes were won that proved, the researchers proved, we human beings are hardwired emotionally first, rationally second. We make our decisions from an emotional place first, rationally second. Anybody who's in marketing or sales probably knows this already. And with that, emotion drives the world economy at the end of the day. That was what the second researcher won his Nobel Prize for. So anybody who gives me pushback on that, I say that it's like, we're human beings at the end of the day. I'm not suggesting we bring our emotions into the workplace, but emotions are the catalyst for action. Emotions are the driver for action. So when I'm in a fierce conversation with you, let's say it's a coaching conversation, perhaps, or even where I need to confront you on something, conflict resolution, something like that. I will ask your perspective, ask how you see things, why it happened. I'll dig deep and ask more. And then I will ask you, and what do you feel about that? And I'll ask you to name those emotions, because those emotions are going to drive the action. So for example, if you need to make a decision, and I ask you to look at 2 different paths, A or B, what do you feel about one? What do you feel about other? And what does the resolution look like at the end of it, even though it's painful to go through the steps to get to that resolution that you need? And visualize that resolution. I'll get you to visualize it. And then what do you feel about that when you think about that and all the results that are going to come from that? And you'll say, I've done it, I feel empowered. I feel ready to go. I feel this, that, or the other. Okay, then when are you going to do it? Let's talk about that. What support can I give you? Let's get it on the calendar. What's your first step? What's the one thing you're going to do to move it in that direction? So I've helped you use your own emotion to let you feel how icky it feels, for lack of a better word. It's status quo if you do nothing. And then I help you visualize the other side of that and ask you what you feel about that. And that emotion is good. And that's the catalyst.
That starts the driving, and so many people talk to me about how do I suppress my emotions? And to me, it's not about suppressing the emotions; it's about acknowledging them and then working towards whatever that outcome is. But I really love that concept of creating that vision, because that becomes the aspiration, that becomes the driving force, and that. One of my favorite sayings that I heard from a leadership, believe it or not, a football coach over here, who talks about long-term vision equates to short-term effort. And that's the way that he gets those short-term efforts each and every day on the training packet, because he tunes it in to that concept of long-term vision, which is very similar to what you've just spoken about. You create that aspiration, you create that sense of, I'm going to feel really good, I'm going to feel empowered, I'm going to feel successful, and then that becomes that catalyst for action. So I can absolutely understand. What compelled you to dive into the fierce conversation?
Well, interestingly enough, I had just come back from India working at the outsourcing company that I was working at, and found myself here in the United States. Somebody gave me Susan Scott's book, Fierce Conversations, said, you've got to read this, man. It's right up your alley. Now, I'll share with you and your audience, the listeners, I'm from LA, and I used to be kind of a live wire as a younger chap, a younger guy, right? And I was all about keeping it real and saying what was on my mind, but I rocked a lot of boats. I ruined some relationships, and most important to me, I hurt some people. I hurt, not physically, but I hurt them, I hurt some feelings, right? So what we talk about at Fierce is how to do that, how to keep it real and say what you really need to say. Say your truth, what needs to be said, but how do you do it in a way that the delivery doesn't rock people's emotional boat? So my friend handed me this book. She had just started working for Fierce as a trainer. I was working with her at Microsoft in India. She came back from the United States a year before me, got hired by Fierce, gave me the book. 8 months later, they called me and said, would you be interested in facilitating as a facilitator with Fierce? I said, yeah, absolutely. And that's how I got the job. It was 5 years ago, this July.
Wow.
And I love what I do. Yeah.
And it comes across to us. It really does come across, that passion. And so when how do you use it to work with businesses and organizations?
It starts, it sounds funny to say, but it starts with a sales call, right? We determining what's the pain point and how do we help that pain point, right? So let me give you an example. One, in the banking and financial industry, a well-known U.S.-based bank has a culture of what they call a culture of nice. And culture of nice where people don't want to step on toes. They don't want to rock the boat. And that is very costly to the organization because when people, as I already mentioned, when people don't speak up, then problems continue, they exacerbate, and they generally get worse, and there's generally a cost to them. So we've gone in and they've specified they wanted 2, what we call models or workshops, feedback, how to give feedback, both constructive and positive, how to ask for feedback, and then what do you do with the feedback when you get it?
Yeah.
Because people were being very nice about giving the feedback, and people were being very nice about returning it and all that, and confronting. Sometimes a behavior or something just needs to stop now. Maybe it's only happened once, and once is too much. Maybe there's been a pattern, and it's got to stop now. But it's not quite to the point of a performance improvement plan or taking them to HR and having that kind of a discussion. But it has to stop now. So this, I almost said their name. This company brought us in and we've been working with them for about 2 years now. I've facilitated at least 50 workshops for them when I was traveling around the United States and now via Zoom, mostly on feedback, fierce feedback and fierce confront model.
Wow.
So that's an example how it works in the workplace.
Just from a personal leadership perspective, I couldn't think of anything worse than working in a nice culture, because that concept of walking on eggshells, not wanting to put people out, would really, because I believe that we love being challenged. As people, we love accepting a challenge. And we normally do that on our own terms, of course. And when I talk with a lot of people, my vintage or even just a slight bit younger, the last time they were fundamentally challenged or that they challenged themselves would have been, back in school or back in university when they're starting to learn something, when they've got to squeeze in a lot of work process into a very short period of time. And then all of a sudden, for a lot of them, it seems that the challenge goes out of their life. And every now and again, they might do a skydive on a landmark birthday or, do abseiling or something. And they look at that as their challenge in life. And really, it's about that continual growth, that continual stretch. And how can I keep stretching myself? One of the questions I asked myself this year, Lewis, was how do I stay relevant? How do I continue to stay relevant? I'd acknowledged that probably over the last 2 years, I hadn't grown in the way that I'd expected that I would have grown. So all of a sudden, I've now got a couple of little projects and a couple of little offshoots on the side so that I can continue to be challenged to make sure that I'm achieving. So, so it's an interesting concept. As I said, walking on eggshells around people, that's draining energy, isn't it? That just drains energy.
It is. And then if I could share a couple of thoughts on that. With that scenario, we often assume, we think we understand. People deliver messages in the sandwich method where they give you the compliment and then they hit you with the meat and then they give you the other compliment. I don't know if you're familiar with that where you are, but in the US we use it. Yeah. And then the message gets muddled and it's not good. Now, I want to just point out that is, I don't want to say from a negative perspective, but that's where we go in. There's a pain point and the company wants us to come in there and help ease that pain point and improve the results that way. Now, I want to say that I've worked with other organizations. One I'm thinking of in particular, that is a stellar organization. They're a fine, smooth running machine, if that's the right way to say that. And now they're taking it to the next level. Yeah. They want their managers to be coaches. They want people to think for themselves, figure stuff out for themselves. So I went in there and I teach them the coaching model, which is a basic, not a basic, but it's like many other coaching models, Socratic questioning, digging deep and letting that person come up with their own solution. So that's going to make them an even more powerful, impactful organization from where they already are. They're already humming along nicely. And so it can work either way. You got a pain point, or we want to actually optimize what we're doing.
Yeah. So who's inspired you in your leadership journey?
Who's inspired me in my leadership journey? If I said their names, nobody would know, but I will call them out. One of my managers that I had at the Ritz-Carlton, who I worked for many years, who gave me opportunities, who called me out when I made mistakes, who called me out when I wasn't being my best.
Yeah.
And a few of the other leaders, I just won't mention their names, and some of them I can't even remember their names, but as a young chap, when I'm 23, 24, 25 years old, giving me opportunities, giving me ownership, holding me accountable, and giving me opportunity. Let me share with you. I don't know if I mentioned this already. If I did, we can edit it out. I started at the Ritz-Carlton as a busboy.
Yeah.
As a busboy at age 22, and worked my way up all the way to management through many roles in between over a period of 18 years. How do they do that? And they're known for that. The Ritz-Carlton and Marriott are known for that. They invest in their people. And I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful to those leaders who saw potential in me.
Yeah.
And help me grow. Absolutely.
That's a great story. So many people are inspired by, the visible leaders, the ones in the papers, the one leading countries. But most of us have got a journey where we have leaders that have encouraged us, supported us, believed in us, often when we didn't believe in ourselves. And they're the ones that I think every leader should be really tapping into, because that's where your growth and your journey comes. When we talk about a career or a journey or a business journey, we don't talk about a staircase to success. We often talk about the peaks and the valleys and the and the whatnot. How do you deal with the inevitable troughs that appear in the journey that you've undertaken?
My journey has not been a straight line. My journey was very curly.
Yeah.
Highs and lows, peaks and valleys. And up until about, a handful of years ago, I used to think to myself, I'm not really a specialist. I'm a jack of all trades. I've done so many things, right? People have asked me that, but I look back on that now, and I'm so grateful and fortunate to have had all of those experiences, highs and lows, peaks and valleys. And not to be cliche about it, but diamonds are made in the rough. It's all about how I choose to look at it. I've had some people really call me out before in the past, even at the Ritz-Carlton. I almost lost my job one time just because I fudged the time on I put that I had left at 5:00 and it was 4:55, right? 5 minutes, but I got called to the mat on that. I was a young chap.
Yeah.
But I learned lessons through all that, right? And so that's kind of how I deal with it. Now, how do I share that or support other people when I'm training? It's just life throws us surprises. Every day there's change. Look at the year 2020. And I ask people, who here had plans for 2020 that didn't quite come to fruition?
Yeah.
And guess what? Mother Nature didn't give us any notice. So this is life. It's change. And that's, it's all about our mindset. How are we choosing to look at it? Again, to be super simple cliche, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? We teach with our fierce accountability model. It's the same amount of water in that glass. How do you choose to look at it?
Yeah.
Is it an opportunity or is it half empty? So
Absolutely.
that's my answer to that question. Yeah. And I expect more peaks and valleys, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many people see failure as a stumbling block or a reason to quit. And I think it's all about having a good, solid relationship with failure and understanding it's all part of the journey. So,
yeah. But Tony, let me say this. Let's not be cheeky about it. Easier said than done. I'm still working on it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's easier said than done. We're all working on it. So.
I'm a John Maxwell coach, and John Maxwell always talks about failure. And one of the things that he will talk about quite openly with his team of 12,000 coaches around the world is that when he fails or when he had something that's gone wrong, he gives himself a time limit. Like he acknowledges that it's part of the process that he's going to feel pretty bad about it. So he says, I'm going to kick cans for 24 hours. He said, but come that time, it's over and I move on. And one of the telling things that I take away from that as well, he says, and it's not just when I fail, it's also when I succeed. So he gives himself that time limit. And I think that that's a really powerful way to look at it. So it's natural to feel bad when we've fallen over, stumbled, whatever. But give ourselves a time limit and then get back on track as quickly as we possibly can.
Exactly what I do. I allow myself 2 days, a weekend. Okay, you can lay around and mope and woe is me for about 2 days. And then, now what are you going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't think 2 days. That's challenging, but yeah. But you're right. It's exactly what we should be doing, and it's what we should be advising. So, leaders or readers, what are you currently reading?
I like to read on a day. I'm not reading anything like a book or self-help, even books or anything like that, but I get my little snippets every day. Simon Sinek, I'm a big fan of his, of course. Brene Brown, big fan of hers. And I want to say, of course, but they really resonate with me. So that's kind of what I'm keeping my finger on. And right now I'm really on to what Simon Sinek is talking about. At least today we were talking, I was reading about, I know, right? I was reading about a lot to do with emotional intelligence. We call it fierce emotional capital. And I think that's really, really a key topic these days as we're all physically separated and with the pandemic going on and all that. So those are the two first ones foremost that come to my mind.
Yeah, I think Simon Sinek's a great creative thinker, and I've got a pile of books at the moment that I'm hoping to get through over the course of the next couple of months, and I think Simon's Infinite Games sitting there at about book number 3 to read, so I'm looking forward to getting into that one as well. But it's interesting, we do form relationships within the concepts of these people. So often we can be, we may get a video coming through on our email system, or we're getting a short little text message or something. And a lot of them share their thoughts on a daily basis, whether it's social media. And it does feel like we're communicating with them because often we'll respond back. So, so out of everything that you've accomplished, what are you most proud of?
I'm working on, recognizing my strengths and my accomplishments. So it's a little hard to do, but I'm most proud of just being, I'm not going to tell you a specific instance, but when I'm facilitating my workshops on communication, whatever they are, I love it. And what makes me proud is when people reach out to me afterwards. It used to be when we were doing it in the facility itself, afterwards they'd come and chat with me and say, wow, light bulbs went off. Now I'm doing it online. When people contact me and say that was impactful, or days later, I practiced what you shared with us, and believe it or not, my husband and I worked it out, or I had to confront my boss and it was tough, and you gave me some tools on how to confront my boss. And it worked out well. That's when I'm most proud. What I'm passionate about has helped someone improve their lives in some way.
So what's the vision for yourself moving forward?
It's a good question because this is in my own context. I'll share with you. It's an uncertain time for me right now. I really, I'm living day to day right now. I'm in California. We got hit hard with this pandemic. Things are barely open right now. We've done a great job at Fierce in staying viable in some extremely hard, challenging times in 2020 when, clients are canceling in-session workshops and all that. So right now where I'm at is my motto to myself, what I've been telling myself through this period the last year is just be patient, stay put. Yeah. So I love what I do with Fierce. The pandemic has forced us to think outside the box and get real creative. And we have a whole ton of offerings now that would have been just a dream for another 4 years had the pandemic not happened. So I'm really lucky and I'm really grateful to do what I do with Fierce. I'm hanging in there to see what we can do and what the future kind of looks like for us. Yeah. And personally, I'm in Laguna Beach, California. So if I'm going to be socially isolated, I'm going to do it right here by the beach where it just stays warm all the time. So
absolutely.
And hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. And you mentioned the work from home, remote leadership. So, and I know that you've done a fair bit of work in this particular space as well. So what if you were to give 3 tips to a leader who's now leading a remote team, what would they look like? What would they be?
First thing is it has to do with emotional intelligence and building what we call emotional capital.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working with a remote team or leading a remote team that has gone remote due to the pandemic. In other words, you weren't remote already. Yeah. This is a shift. This is a change, right? You've got to check in with your people with no agenda, not a scheduled meeting. You've got to check in with them and as genuinely as you can. What's keeping you up at night? What's on your plate right now that you're not sure about? what's going on, just check in on a human level, start to build that trust. That's first and foremost thing, number one. Second is ask a lot of questions, because we're not in person. It's hard for us to see the body language. And then if someone's camera's off, we're more apt to assume that we're hearing what's actually being said. And those assumptions can lead us in the wrong places. So get really curious, ask a lot of questions, and then ask more questions and repeat what you just heard. And then make sure you're clear on accountability, what needs to be done, because we're not in the same office so that you can see what people are doing, if you're a leader. So you've got to set the standards, and you've got to just set the cadence of, when we're meeting and what the expectations are. But I put that last. First and foremost, right now, it's important to just check in. Yeah. How are you? Yeah. What's on your plate? What's keeping you up? How can I support you? What else is going on?
Excellent.
So those are my 3 tips.
Excellent. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, Lewis, that I should have asked you? And I always give this as a bit of this is your chance to jump on a soapbox and give us something that we haven't talked about.
I think the most important thing that comes to mind is, it's what I do and it's what I'm passionate about: effective communication, effective conversations, fierce conversations, however you want to call them. One conversation at a time, gradually then suddenly, we're either headed towards the results or goals we say we want and the relationships, etc., or away from them. One conversation at a time, gradually and suddenly, a success or a failure. And that starts with us personally, in my personal relationships and at work. And the way I look at it, you can extrapolate it all the way up to the world, politicians, governments. How effective are their communications? What are their assumptions? All of these things, it works through all levels. So if we can just change our own worlds, one conversation at a time between you and me and the people that are in my world and the people that are in your world, to improve our conversations, to get more curious, to try to understand how other people see it without jumping in with our judgments and letting them know how they should see it. Mm-hmm. They're wrong and we're right always. And just being curious and saying, hey, I see it differently. You see it that way. We have different perspectives, and enrich the relationship. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. That's what I want to say, man. I think we just by doing that in our own individual lives, if we could all practice that exponentially, it'll move things. It'll move the needle in a different direction.
And so much power, not just from a business perspective, but from a personal, community, and even country perspective, if we start to take some of that advice on. So absolutely. Lewis, how can people connect with you?
Please, first of all, connect with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn/IN/ my name, Luis Gonzalez. I love expanding my network and connecting with people, networking. We can continue the conversation. Please go to the Fierce website and go to resources. We have a ton of free resources to support exactly what we've been talking about today with effective conversations. So that's Fierce Inc. www.fierceinc.com/resources. Take a look at what we got to offer. Reach out to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's continue the conversation.
Excellent.
Let's network.
And I'll make sure I've got that in the show notes. Lewis, it's been a fantastic pleasure speaking with you this Californian afternoon. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to remaining connected and learning more about Fierce.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you for the opportunity, Tony. I appreciate it.
Join the group of people impacted by seriously simple stuff to get you unstuck. The first book by Tony Coach Curl. Available at Amazon, Tony's Simple Stuff provides the tool for people to master your life and aspirations. 20% of every book sold supports Carter's cause.
So how was that? Not bad for our first interview for 2021. And it's really relevant at the moment for me to be asking how the 3 tips for leaders to help other leaders right around the world work with the new work from home and remote workforce. And one of the things that I really liked that Louis talked about is that whole concept of checking in without an agenda. And I guess the way that I'm looking at it this year for a lot of the leaders that I coach is that initially one of our challenges when it came to COVID was, how do I maintain that connection? How do I maintain communication when people are no longer in the office? So the initial challenge was to continually connect and to have those clear communication channels. But we're now a year into this thing, and we need to start casting a greater aspirational vision for our work from home teams, because it now should be more than just check-ins. It should be more than Zoom morning teas. It should be more than Zoom cocktail hours. It is now about how can we embrace this and learn to develop and truly unlock the potential of our teams. Where fundamentally we're not in a position to sit with them. We're not in a position to see them in the office. We're not in that position to observe their behaviours, their skills, their development, their communication, their embrace of others. Because in the office we get a gauge of that each and every day. When we're working from home, it presents a challenge. So I'm glad that Louis picked up on that. The challenge as Louis sees it is that emotional capital, so checking in without an agenda. Ask a lot of questions. Number 2, ask a lot of questions because, we're apt to assume in the office space, let alone what's happening in the home life. And number 3, being really clear on accountability. So any leaders that are leading a team that is remote or working from home, they're 3 really cool tips that you can use to really help you take your leadership and your team to the next level. Some of the research that's starting to come out around work from home is really insightful as well. And there's also that real concern that we lose visibility of people, and that when the people that do go back into an office mode are more likely to get promoted just because of that fact that they're visible. And I guess that's a challenge for leaders. We need to be thinking about that when it comes time to developing our teams, looking at succession planning, doing performance reviews. A person may be more effective and may perform better at home, and just because they're at home and lacking that visibility of others in the office, that shouldn't override the performance that they're doing. So fierce conversations, one conversation at a time. And as Louis said, you can connect with him on LinkedIn or visit the Fierce website with a link to the resources, and both of those are in the show notes. A big thank you to Louis for investing in today's leaders. Now is the time for you to take control of your leadership growth in this disruptive world in which we navigate. Our aim to help you become the leader you need to be today. If you're looking to build better leadership skills, check out the Today's Leader website at todaysleader.com.au. Our website showcases the podcast and the magazine, and we're pleased to say that we now offer masterminds. Supported by our network sites, Today's Leader is a collective mindset for the leaders and entrepreneurs of today, forging the path of success for tomorrow. The mindset to make a difference, the ability to create an impact. Think and Grow Business hosts our Today's Leaders Mastermind. Think and Grow Business, where we focus on personal, professional and business growth. Book your free 30-minute discovery call at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. You'll see that link right on the front page. The Coach Call Academy has over 78 programs to help you build a better you. Join for just $1 for the first month. The academy that equips you and enhances your mindset, your leadership, and your business. Check it out at thecoachcallacademy.com. Don't forget, you are standing stronger, braver, and wiser. Don't forget the golden rule. Don't be an arsehole. I'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.